Today we're going to talk a little bit about autism and some of the symptoms that are indicative of autism. Now, the first thing we want to note is that the symptoms for autism are wide and complex, and it's not easy always to tell that autism is there unless many of these symptoms are present in one child. So remember, this is a general overview of the kind of symptoms that are seen when a child has autism, but that the overriding issue is that the signs and symptoms of autism are wide, diverse, and complex. Usually, by age 3, if a child has autism, these signs or symptoms become evident. They can be noted in the child. What is noticed usually is that the child is making ordinary progress up to about age 3, and then suddenly there is a regress in abilities. So normal progress towards age 3, and then suddenly a regress in that progress. So cognitive distortion begins to show itself at this point. Things that they were learning, they suddenly don't seem to know anymore. Language skill is definitely not present. They're not making good progress in that. And we have that down here. Basically, there's a language delay. And in that language delay, what you tend to notice is an echoing back of things that are heard, but no meaningful conversation, no interaction. It's as if what you're saying doesn't really register so that they're responding to it. It's just like you pushed record and it was recorded, and then you pushed play and it came right back at you without it seeming to register. So progress and then regress in cognitive distortion. You'll also notice an uneven distribution of intellectual competence. So there'll be high competence in some areas and yet no competence in others, and there's no balance there at all. So ordering things, numbering things, counting things may be off the chart. You're like, wow, my child's brilliant, going to be a mathematician. And yet language skills, social skills, and other things seem to be utterly non-existent. This is one of those wide and complex symptoms related to autism, then. Uneven distribution of intellectual competence, progress in some areas, and in that area suddenly regress. Then you get repetitive or stereotypic motions, Why they would do the same thing over and over again is once again related to the autism, that they get comfort from that, or it's just a part of their world. Those with autism are often described as being in their own world, and this is actually the case. In their mind, this makes sense in their world, this repetitive motion. And once again, it brings comfort. So this is noted in them, that they would just sit perhaps for hours doing the same motion over and over and over again, without really understanding that they were doing it over and over and over again. You also get a distorted sensory perception. In this type of complex of symptoms, what you would have is the child is touched lightly and there is a pulling away, as if it were painful, the lightest touch being painful. Touch that would normally bring a sense of comfort or pleasure, a caress, is perceived as hurtful or painful, and the child retreats from it. And it's not 100% understood why, but what would ordinarily be seen as a comforting motion, a hug and things like this, is rejected by the child with autism as being uncomfortable to them and perhaps even painful. So a distortion of their sensory perception. We talked about language display, but there's also a fascination with flickering lights, that a child can be completely honed in on that and look at these flickering lights without end, just utterly fascinated with it and not bored with it at all. I mean, they wouldn't actually even leave the situation saying, well, that's interesting, now I'm going to do something else. They can't really even hardly be distracted from it either. So a fascination with flickering lights, the language delay, an echoing back of what they hear, and then perhaps what is most difficult for the parents of children with autism is there's little or no connection to caregivers, little or no emotional connection, a recognition of receiving affection or reciprocating affection. They literally are in their own world and seem completely oblivious to what's going on around them, and not able to receive affection, physical, verbal, or otherwise. And all these things add up to be symptoms of autism. Now, there obviously are more symptoms than this and other things that play into it. This has just been a brief overview of some of the symptoms of autism. If you'd like to learn more about this and related matters, there's a link underneath this video. If you'll click on that link, it'll take you to the website with that information, and while you're there, you'll also find an ebook that's ready for immediate download.